Hey everybody, Larry Powell here, your host for Studio HFL. Welcome to Live With here on Star Wars Day, May 4th. And of course, our guest tonight, Alan Vizzutti. And we're going to get to Alan in just a second, but I want to take care of some housekeeping business and, of course, recognize Trent Austin and Austin Custom Brass for sponsoring this month's interviews again. Of course, ACB did last month. He's going to sponsor this month and on into June. So thank you, Trent. Alan, have you had experience with Trent and Austin Custom Brass?
Actually, no.
Well, you know what? We need to set up a relationship between you and Trent.
Okay.
So,
Sounds good.
But Trent's a great guy, and of course, everybody there at ACB, the service is great, the products they've got are great, and Trent does a great job of social media, of getting out there and promoting his business. But he's got so many vintage instruments that come through his shop, and he plays and shows off every one of them, and it's great. And he's a great player on top of it. So bonus. So thank you, Trent. Of course, you can find out more by going to austincustombrass.biz. That's .biz. I want to let you know too that if you want to follow Studio HFL, where you truly do hear from legends, and we have one with us tonight, you can do that, of course, at studiohfl.com. You can do that on YouTube and Instagram and Facebook at Studio HFL. If you go to Studio HFL webpage, you can sign up for the newsletter. Of course, you can shop for merchandise. In fact, this new merchandise we've got, this World Trumpet Force shirt, right? And did I tell you what Ventilabis Magis translates? It's blow harder.
Oh, how perfect.
Yeah, right? I mean, if a trumpet player needed a motto, there it is right there. So we've got that one. And then my wife came up with this design right here. I think might be my favorite. It says, "We will not be silenced." She made that logo with that mute there. I love that. So we've got both of those.
Did she stylize your picture?
What do you mean by stylize?
Well, a stylist at a photo shoot or at a commercial photo shoot tells you what to do, kind of.
No, actually, that was down in our music room downstairs, and I kind of photoshopped the background out of it, and it's amazing what you can do,
your
right?
shirt might be too tight.
Well, it might have been. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, we've got one more here. Oh yeah. So May, I got to show you what's up for May. Of course, Alan, you're here tonight. Guess who's here next week? Mary Elizabeth Bowden.
Ooh.
That is going to be. I tell you what, May's a great lineup. We've got you. We've got Mary. Let's see. After that, of course, we've got a guy who can barely play above high C, Wayne Bergeron. Of course, that's going to be fun. And right after that, now I have never met this guy before, but I have heard wonderful things about Bijan Watson. Really looking forward to talking to him at the end of the month.
Lineup.
So, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so I'm really looking forward to talking to everybody. Let's see, what else have I got down here? Of course, the regular podcast releases. Hunter Everly's interview came out a couple days ago, so now that is available. Hunter's principal trumpet with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, and that's a great interview. Of course, on the radio show Thursday nights at 8 p.m., have turned some pre-existing interviews into a radio show where I'm able to incorporate music. And last week and this week, it was a two-parter. I chose Mike Williams. Mike was the 31-year lead trumpet player he wasn't 31 years old. He was with Count Basie for 31 years. Just a great interview. And if anybody knows Mike Williams, he's a character. And that Louisiana accent makes this interview easy to listen to. So check that out. Of course, Thursday nights, WICR 88.7 FM, The Diamond. I'm getting pretty good at the radio kind of thing, I think. So
you're in your groove.
Yeah. So I think that's all the business I needed to take care of. So, Alan, may the 4th be with you.
Thank you.
So I, of course, welcome. I looked to see when I first interviewed you. It was May 14th of last year. It's been almost a year.
Almost exactly. I didn't know that, but yeah, I remember.
and then of course you and I spoke maybe 4 or 5, 6 weeks ago about Vinny. But yeah, hard to believe it's been a year. So here's the first really important question. Where were you? Where did you first see Star Wars?
I was on the road and I went to it with Nelson Hatt. I was on the road with Woody Herman, so it was 1977, right? Philadelphia.
You were in Philly.
Yeah, which I wouldn't have a lot of reason to be there if it weren't for gigging, actually, because, actually I had relatives in Wilmington, come to think of it, which is close. But yeah, I remember Nelson Hatt telling me about this crazy new George Lucas thing, and we should check it out. And we had a day to do it, which was kind of unusual, actually. And I remember going with him. Yeah.
Were you as blown away like everybody else?
Well, pretty much. I mean, not only was it just a unique comic book like thing in a way, but it was they were using that all the technologies were new. It wasn't that long before that movie that they couldn't do 3D shots on a computer or anything. It was all had to be models, and I'm not a movie maker, so I don't know all the jargon and the tech, but there was innovative tech there for sure. And well, of course, it continued through all the movies. But yeah, it was really interesting. I remember thinking that I was kind of into movies like a little more serious, sort of even science fiction, but the heavier weight stuff. And this was for the whole family, right? And so I remember when I guess it was a few years later, E.T. came out. Yeah, quite a few years later. But I remember the kind of light side of it. I actually wondered if it would succeed. There you go.
Really?
That tells the whole story of my business head.
Yeah. It's a good thing you stuck to Trumpet, right?
Yeah, well, that's kind of like banging your head, isn't it?
Yeah. So do you remember what you paid for a movie ticket back in 1977?
No, I don't. Probably $5 or something.
Oh, I think it was less than that.
Yeah, it could be. I don't remember.
It was like $3 if I remember. You mentioned E.T. I have to tell you, I think that was 1983 that came out, and I double dated and actually that's not correct. I took 2 girls to see E.T.
That's kind of a double.
Yeah, but I mean, I look back and I think, man, my wife is sitting in the room here. I guess I can't say too much right now, but she already knows that story. So
she knows the stuff and understands.
yeah,
But you had your little ego trip, and now it's back to reality, dude.
exactly. So, and we're
Happy.
celebrating 25 years this year. So, things have worked out really well.
Congrats.
So, thank you.
That's amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And she is a wonderful musician too, violinist. Like I know you're married to a wonderful musician as well, right?
Yes, Janice. Yes, Laura. She's we're on our 34th year.
34. Congratulations.
In a few days, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, terrific.
Numbers that I never thought I would even think about in terms of, I remember the first time I said something like, oh, that was 20 years ago. And it hit me like a ton of bricks. That point of reference, you're getting old enough so you have that point of reference.
Right.
Just, oh yeah, 20 years ago. And I went, oh my God. But that's life.
Well, it's interesting. Somebody just posted recently Fire Dance. Was it 77? And then I don't know what the most recent was. Did you see that side by side?
I did, but I didn't listen to it.
It was almost like the same person.
Yeah, right.
Well,
I don't know which performance the newer one was, because there are quite a few, and some are with excellent groups, some are with weaker groups, some are my performances are better than others, of course. And then there's one that I did in a studio with a group of 10 trumpets and rhythm section, and it could have been that one. I don't know.
Oh.
But that one sounds pretty good because it's all produced, and
right.
The quality of the recording is high.
Right. Yeah. You looked so young in that early one.
It's starting to hurt. It's starting to hurt a little bit. But the truth be told, that's what happens.
Yeah.
That's why I have this blinding background here and a soft focus on the front.
Yeah. But you don't feel old, do you?
No, not really.
No. Isn't it funny, when we're kids, we look at people our age, and I'll be 55 this week, I don't feel it, not even close.
Yeah. Well, that's the way you got to have that attitude. I mean, it can be a little tricky sometimes, but without going deeply into this, it's a good perspective for people to have about, doing the right thing, being nice, picking your battles, having some compassion, having some empathy, because it goes by quickly. And when you get to my age, you start losing some close friends. I mean, look at the trumpet case behind you. Cancer Blows, Ryan Anthony.
Right.
Chris Vidala, the great sax player, is a close friend of mine. And, there's a list, and some are very, very tragic, as opposed to, say, my dad, who died at 97, was a wonderful man and taught me to play. I call it a very sad time, but not really a tragedy sort of thing. But keeping that perspective, don't let it depress you, but try to keep your foot in your head in the right place, and you can.
Right.
It's also motivating. I really want to practice still. And I've been talking to Doc Severinsen recently a bit, and he's still practicing his tail off too.
Yeah. Yeah, he just started the Tebow routine a couple months ago.
He likes to try everything.
Right.
He'll take what works for him, which is a great lesson for all the trumpet players too. Take what works for you. You don't have to swallow the whole pill.
Right.
Of whatever method or book it is. Yes, he's fabulous, and he's a great example. As was Snooky Young, for instance, who played great until he got whatever you call the end.
I still, you go online and you look up Doc's videos, but I end up looking for Snooky, or anytime Clark Terry had been on the Tonight Show, and then and then you go down the rabbit hole of watching all the Clark Terry videos.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, what amazing players we can.
Well, that's such an epic understatement, isn't it? And their individuality is one thing that makes them greater than great. Mm-hmm. And without that, we would be a mess, to be honest with you. The individuality. Can I go on this?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, with the COVID deal and all the internet activity, and then I, like others, have gotten more involved with Instagram and YouTube and things like that. And it's fun, and I like, in quotations, producing these videos and things that I do. You also come across some amazing players you never heard of, or you should have heard of and didn't, or no one's heard of all ilks, females, males, kids, who are just playing their literal behinds off in different, and they have their different aspects of direction you can see happening,
right?
In terms of jazz or classical, but also in styles within those designations. And for instance, Lewis, is it Loudonson? Is that his name in England, UK?
Oh, Louis Dowdswell.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, Dowdswell. I had heard of him and stuff, but I hadn't researched, and I just listened to some of his stuff. And he and Wayne Bergeron are real good friends, and Wayne is kind of, I don't know if he's mentored him, but he's had him do some gigs and things. Yep. This kid can play, man. Right. In that genre, he can probably do a lot more than you see on the videos, but in that genre, I mean, almost untouchable. The beautiful sound with such a range and all that.
I interviewed him. His has not come out yet. And what a humble guy, for somebody as young and talented.
Yeah, see, I haven't met him yet, so that's good to hear.
Yeah, he's terrific. And Wayne was telling me about him. He has mentored him, and when Wayne got sick, Louis took some of those gigs.
Yeah.
So
right. I was in that circle a little bit and was trying to help a little bit, but I knew what was going on there when Wayne got sick. And he's not only the powerful, beautiful, smooth. It's as if his upper register is just an octave lower when he plays it, but he's also a great jazz player. I mean, Latin jazz stuff, really cool notes and good choices. So is Wayne. I mean, they're not clones, but that brings me back to my earlier comment about the uniqueness of each individual. Really starts to designate whether you get found, whether you kind of have a bigger career or not. I mean, if you're just a high note producer, for instance, or a boring fast note mixed with high note jazz player, there are limits to where you're going to go with that. If you are not the most chop oriented person and you play the coolest, sexiest jazz or the most beautiful Haydn in the world, you're going to go somewhere, and that's a nice perspective to have. It's also a relief because we can't all do everything. You just can't.
It was not all that long ago that I kind of realized there are people who are meant to do what Sergei does. There are people like you who are meant to do what you do. So I should find what I do and just do it really well, right? Not try it. Of course, as freelancers, right, we have to do a little bit of everything. But
of course,
rather than try to market myself as a screaming lead trumpet player, that's not me. but
It's actually not me either, to be
I
honest
can
with you.
play lyrically,
Oh
and
yeah.
so I'll focus on that. Um,
That's advice that I can't remember right now. Someone said this on one of the major networks, and it wasn't totally about music. It was maybe an actor. The bottom line being that thing that they say, well, follow your heart and do what you love.
hmm,
He said that's almost it. But
hmm,
additionally, you should follow your heart, do what you love at something you're good at.
hmm.
Because a lot of people get frustrated by their love of music and their lack of interface with the instrument they chose. That can be really frustrating and heartbreaking.
Go into that a little bit more. Explain that a
Yeah.
little deeper.
Well, I had some friends, for instance, who were very good musicians and very creative and very knowledgeable and good ears and all that, who interfaced. They had been playing an instrument that was very difficult for them, and sometimes it was trumpet, and actually it made it into Eastman School of Music, for instance. And they struggled a lot in terms of, I guess you could call it the competition, but basically it was how did they stack up, or they couldn't win auditions, or they couldn't kind of make headway playing their instrument. Some of them took totally different paths for their careers, and some maybe switched instruments or started to do things in production or very, very entertainment oriented. And we're very happy because they found out, wow, I'm so good at
Hmm,
producing. I'm a fantastic engineer and I know how to play. And there, of course, you can take a veer off into any career you want to
right?
imagine. And some of those people have become very successful, and lots of them, and play their instruments with great passion and fun. And they're not really interested in traveling, 1,000 miles and playing with a high school band. Not that that's a bad thing, but and then running back to work the next day. They're not that interested in that kind of wear and tear on their body for their music, but they're very active in the musical
Hmm.
in their musical community. And finding that balance takes some honesty with yourself, and it takes some, um, well, whatever you would call not being naive. You shouldn't let your naivete take over and think that you're going to. I hear some, I had one student as an example who said, when I first had him, I said, what would you like to do with your trumpet? Because he was majoring in sciences and getting straight A's down the board, some kind of sciences. And he said, well, I'd like to play in an orchestra in Europe. I said, well, that's really cool. Okay, here's what I want to do. Next time, bring in your C trumpet. Well, I don't have a C trumpet. Okay, well, bring in some excerpts and we'll work on B flat trumpet. What's an excerpt? Then it was time to have a little talk. And he turned out great, and he was glad he found out that,
Hmm.
you don't just walk in and play with an orchestra. Because some people don't have a notion of these things, even though those of us in the trumpet world and in the semi-professional and professional world and the university music world know the steps you have to go through to be playing a studio, to play in an orchestra, or to start your own career, or to do all those things and make up big slices of the pie for your career. So
I've got a senior just graduating. Actually, she's got an internship to do, but she's graduating in music theory. Sorry, music therapy.
oh yeah.
But she came in music education,
Hmm.
and after a couple of years, realized this isn't what I want to do. And thankfully, she's found a path earlier than a lot of us do. It might take us a
Yeah.
while after college before we realize I should be doing something else. But to see where she came in, and she was really focused. She's extremely talented,
Yeah.
but music ed was not her thing. And
Yes.
thankfully she found music therapy, and she's got the right disposition. That is meant for her. So I told her, I said, she's going to go really far. She's going to do well
And what
with
a
that.
powerful and important area to
Right.
career.
And oh my gosh, you look at the need.
The need,
That's a
yeah.
really growing area for that. So
And in the past decade, the scientific results of music therapy type things and neurobiology connection, it's fantastic how they work together.
there's a James Morrison video of him playing
Yeah,
trumpet or flugelhorn with his right hand, and bass on the keyboard with his left hand, and
that's right.
that old guy sitting there,
Yeah,
and all of a sudden he just comes to life, right? And he's
yeah.
comping. I think
He is with his right hand. Yeah,
I don't know how many times I've watched that video.
it's
You know,
something
and
you can tear up watching that thing.
well, and of course, I'm sure James wasn't thinking I'm going to go in and do music therapy, but I mean that's a great example of what can happen.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and
And James is a music ambassador of all sorts. So yeah,
yeah,
that
um,
horn of his is probably one of those Shargle things that's all bent. You know,
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
not sure, but it looks
yeah.
like Shargle. Yeah.
Have you ever played one of those?
I have just a few notes, and I think they're kind of cool in the sense, um, if you've ever, now here's me projecting after a few notes, you know, not really studying the instrument or playing it for very long, but if you put sort of a trumpet shaped mouthpiece on a cornet,
Mm,
and it's a conical instrument, you can kind of rip all over the place with it, right? But the sound is funky. I think it's kind of in that direction where it has more conical quality, but
mhm.
with a trumpet mouthpiece, it's a bit easier to play in a lot of ways. Well, I'm not talking about James. He can play a garden hose
Right.
and sound as good as anybody, you know?
Right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I think those rotary valves, and I don't know, maybe Yamaha doesn't want you talking about this sort of thing, but
no, they don't care. They don't care.
uh, well, I know I was just kidding, but yeah,
Oh,
those
okay,
th-
okay.
those rotary valves are terrific. But there's so much good equipment out there. Um,
Yeah,
Holy
many
cow,
choices.
that was a huge left turn, going from from memory care to equipment.
That's the
Um,
same. That's the way that I ski too. I have no plan. I just point downhill and then I don't pick my route and I make a few good choices and then crash.
okay, did you get to ski much this past winter?
No, I didn't.
Mainly because maybe slopes weren't open.
Oh yeah, the COVID year. No, no, we didn't even make any trips or anything.
Yeah.
And we can ski nearby here, but they were all closed pretty much. Yeah, so no, I haven't been out for quite a while.
Hmm. Traveling at all?
A couple of family things, and my
Hmm.
wife and I are both fully vaccinated, which just is our peace of mind.
Hmm.
Um, I don't believe the science is clear yet on whether a vaccinated person can carry the virus. So we don't try to be, we are very cautious for other people as well.
Sure.
But we have taken a couple flights to visit family. And then we had one recent performance where we played with a small orchestra in Idaho, um, soloing throughout the whole night, and some pieces that I wrote or arranged. And Laura played piano solo, I played trumpet solo, and we played together, blah, blah, blah. And the hall allowed 50 people, and there were 48 people in the orchestra plus the two of us. And so we've live streamed it.
Oh, how fun.
Yeah.
I've enjoyed thinking of recent performances. Of course, you've been doing these covers of standards, right? You're
Yeah, a
sitting in
little
your
bit.
your home studio, and uh, I mean, that's fun, and it's not like the some of the pyrotechnics that that
No.
you've put out there before. But man, it's really great. Like, was One Note Samba one of those that you did
Yes.
recently?
Uh-huh.
Really nice, and
Thank you.
that put me back on the cruise ship. Uh, you know,
Sorry
uh,
about
yeah,
that.
no, no, that's okay. It's like, the girl with emphysema, and that you hear night after
Yeah.
night after night, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That
Um,
tune, though, One Note Samba is one of the stellar sets of changes. It's really interesting. It's a little challenging, and it's just a beautiful set of changes. Wow.
mhm. But you said you're not a jazz player, but you still enjoy working through those changes, right? Working through tunes.
Did I say that?
Well, I thought maybe. Oh, earlier maybe you were saying you're not like one of those. Oh, you said you're not the high note guy.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
Yeah.
what it was. Well, yeah, because I was gonna definitely you're a jazz player.
Well, I have a realistic evaluation of my jazz playing, and it's not bad. Um, and I know the reasons that if you find the right you find the right instrumentalist in the right environment, and growing up with the right people and the right teachers and the right music around you, how that can affect your life, as opposed to in the world of jazz, growing up in Wasp, Missoula, Montana, with parents who were very musical, but love music, but it's mostly classical and
Right.
opera. Um, you get my perspective there, and the influences that can happen. And I'm truthful about that. But one nice thing for me is when I play stuff, I get a little frustrated sometimes, but I think I'm still getting better at it, and my choices are better, and there are still a lot of challenges, but it's pretty fun to take those on. And there's no limit to what you can learn with music and trumpet and other instruments. So there's that.
See, to me, this entire time with you tonight was worth that last 30 seconds right there.
Oh, good.
Well, we could roll credits right now.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I love hearing that because, it's like even Sergey or who was that? Was it Pablo Casals? They're talking about some of these, why do you still practice when you're 90? He goes, well, I'm hoping to get better. That kind,
Yeah.
it's like, it doesn't matter, where you are, but this continual, uh, this striving for excellence, always trying to learn something new, always trying to find something different. I think why wouldn't we do that? We got to keep it interesting. We got to keep it fun.
Yes, and propelling forward or moving forward as you get older helps keep you young and alive and vibrant and busy. I really feel for people who, the metaphorical fabric factory job, and then they retire, and then they're ill, and then they're gone. Um, People who are curious do well. Did you see the Doc Severinsen "It's Never Too Late"
I 4 times already.
documentary?
4 times.
Only 4?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry.
Well, his great line from that was, "I'm a work in progress."
Right.
One of them. Yeah.
Right.
Which is in the same conversation as we're having. Yeah.
I want to go back. You had said something earlier, and I realized I didn't know much about you before Eastman, but you had said that your dad had taught you to play trumpet.
That's right.
How old were you?
I
And
started
and
when I was, oh, sorry, go ahead.
well, how old were you? And like, what was the method? Did he, make you sit down and?
Oh, yeah. Um, there was no real method. My dad owned a music store. I was 7. He played a little trumpet around the house, basically. He seldom played in public, and he had a little bit of a performance anxiety problem that he never quite figured out. So he didn't really enjoy playing in public much, although a handful of times. When he was in high school and, university age, he ended up going, World War II was happening, so he became a soldier in the 10th Mountain Division in Italy. But so he taught me in sort of the old school of starting. In other words, you buzz your lips and you make a sound and you kind of start working from the resources. He had taken some lessons with a person named Gibson who was teaching at the University of Montana. And this person had a book, and I didn't know anything about him, and there's not much that I found about him. I've looked at the book and it's mostly text, so it's kind of okay. Anyway, Dad did a lot of research, and he was a good student type person. He would study things that he wanted to do as well as do them. And so he would dig up information and he brought home Charlier and French horn books published by Alphonse Leduc and clarinet etudes. Of course, not the first, not when I was 7, but all kinds of literature he would throw at me, and because he had a music store with the books and stuff in there, and I would take real good care of them. He'd just take them back, stamp them, and then put them back on the shelf, or I would keep them. I still have a Charlier book from that period that's almost just falling apart in my hands. So to better answer your question was, I don't remember exactly. I remember making my first sound and giggling because, there it was, on a cornet. I was teeny. I couldn't reach the end of a trumpet
Yeah.
for a few years. When we had in grade school band, when we had a boop bop part, I had to use a paper card to reach around the end. And I was all concerned about that, as kids would be. But anyway.
Sure.
What I do remember specifically, though, was his persistence with listening and the sound. Listen to the sound and make it something you like, and make it bigger. And he liked opera. He didn't talk about singing much, but he liked to listen to a lot of opera. And I think that helped, even when he was a child in the mountains of Montana with his sisters. They used to listen to the Metropolitan Opera broadcasts that were on by radio when they were on Sunday afternoons. And that's one time the family would gather, the Italian family, and listen to the broadcast. My aunt, who lived in the sticks of Montana her entire life, knew more about opera and libretto than I ever knew. And to this day, she would know more than I do. I would ask her questions from Eastman School about opera when I had to have some kind of test or something. And I think that notion of sound helped establish a fundamental that would not come from playing lip slurs or even long tones. If you're not trying to project a big, beautiful, round sound. He didn't use all those words, but he kind of persisted. While we're on the what you learn when your dad teaches you, if you get along. And for the most part, we got along great. I mean, once in a while, I was a snot, but
Sure.
yeah. But basically, he persisted with all that,
Mm-hmm.
and we got through all that. But he also was there, right? Um, a good dad. We go fishing. I had a brother and sister, whatnot, and he would. I liken it to a boat that's going down a canal, and if it's drifting down and you touch it a little bit, very often it'll stay right in the middle, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wait a week, it's going to clang into the side, and then you got to undo that and fix it. Well, I was practicing, and so every day he would have something to say for 5 or 10 minutes, pretty much every day. And I did want to practice. After the first few months, I was lazy the first few months, or just not that interested. Because I remember probably 6 or 8 months in, him going like, "Look, if you want to play well, you got to learn." I think it was the fingerings actually. You got to learn those fingerings and sit down and start practicing. And I did, because I was starting to get feedback that was good too at school and things like that. Yeah, so he guided me with these little touches very often, but we also had an hour, 45-minute or an hour a week lesson for many years. And then in high school, we would play, well, junior high age, kind of early high school, maybe 15, 16 years old. We would play a lot of duets also. And he could play the Arbin duets. And he wasn't a rangy player, but he had good technique and nice sound. He liked Harry James, for instance.
Who
Not
doesn't?
a big jazz guy, but he wasn't a big jazz guy at all. But he liked jazz on the sort of white society level, like Harry James was. Although Harry James was hipper than like Paul Whiteman or something like that, and much better trumpet player than people give him credit for sometimes. Anyway, we would play these duets, and I remember one day him going like, "Okay, oh, I know what we were doing. We were playing etudes, and we would play a page or maybe a Arbin characteristic study, and then the other guy would play it, and we'd talk about who did it better." So he was making me comfortable talking about it, all the aspects of playing it when it wasn't good, and even commenting on what he did or whatever. And I was not an outgoing or pushy kid, so I think it was pretty easy for him to handle it, whatever. It wasn't as if I was going to acting school or something like that, you know, as far as exuberance. And I remember finally, I'll end. He said, "Okay, I think that's enough of that. You can just play it alone now," you know.
Nice.
But the lessons continued. Then shortly thereafter, Doc Severinsen visited my town. Other soloists, Mendez visited before that. Before I was in the groups to play with this soloist, Mendez visited. I heard him live. Al Hurt came through once. And then there was a university band with a couple of decent players. There was a guy named John Wilson who ended up playing first in one, I believe, the Navy band. The Navy, I don't know if it was the Commodores. I guess it was. Is it the Navy Commodores? Yeah. Anyway,
Yes.
he played first in that jazz ensemble for a while and connected with me again years and years later when he came back to Missoula. But so there were some influences there. Some of it I didn't understand, and my mind was a little shocked by hearing a big band. The military band came through Missoula once and played at the university, and I went. And when I was hearing these lead trumpet notes in high G and F, big as a house, I didn't understand it. I didn't know how that was done. My dad got me a book once that was I still have it. It's a French Alphonse Leduc publication. It's nice. Of all the first, or most of the first trumpet parts to the Bach,
Right.
and Brandenburg, and the B minor Mass and the Magnificat and those pieces. And when I looked at the Brandenburg, I remember my dad and I studying it and going, "Why is this not in D like the rest of it? Is the transposition right? Because it would be so high. Can this be correct? Is it a misprint because it's the only one in the book like this?" It baffled us for a while till we did some research. And then I couldn't believe, how do you play this thing? I didn't know there was even with a piccolo trumpet. Makes it sound kind of backwoodsy. I mean, my dad sold instruments and he knew a lot, but somehow we didn't quite make that connection and with what was possible. And there are later stories about I jumped in with both feet on piccolo and took the Brandenburg Concerto on a professional gig before I could play it, and had three work. I think I told us you
You
the other
did.
day.
You told me
Yeah.
Vinny stepped in, right?
Yeah, he told me how to back off and play correctly,
Right.
and it worked fine. But
Yeah.
so yeah, that's a very unique and wonderful thing to have spent with and a supportive mother with your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Um, very unique, and I feel sorry for not musicians but kids who don't have happy childhoods and connection like that, because it's shapes your life, you know.
Well, it's funny you say that. I've just finished this Suzuki trumpet training,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and it's all about that. Of course, not just Suzuki trumpet, but Suzuki in general is about
yeah.
that, providing that atmosphere, surrounding and nurturing, and oh my gosh, I mean, not to go off on the whole thing right now, but I mean, but that's, yeah, I'm with you. I wish that could be the situation for everybody, and
Yeah.
not just for music, right? I mean, just to grow to be
Oh
a,
no,
a,
not at
a good
all.
person, right? And
Yeah.
so, um,
Well, we have to just carve out what we can in our little corner of the world, and some people
mhm,
will do big things like Bill Gates Foundation or something,
right.
and great great groups like there's a place here called Amara, which is a helps foster children, especially difficult to foster children because of age or whatnot. And some of us do small things consistently, helping one student at a time. That's all good.
Well, yeah, even think about Herb Alpert, right? And
Mhm.
his what's the word? Philan-
Foundation,
philanthropy. Is that the right
philanthropy,
word? Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it's just people who give back like that. It's just it's fantastic. Yeah, I want to go back to uh, Chris Vidala. It popped back into my head. The very first live concert. Well, that's not true. I heard my first opera in 1972. Um, but my first real concert that I remember going to by choice um, was Chuck Mangione in
Oh yeah,
1979.
yeah,
And of course, I had the Feel So Good album,
yeah.
and hearing Chris play on there. Of course, Chuck surrounded himself with just great players, but Chris was
Yes,
ridiculous. I, you know,
yeah. Chris was he could have played with name your band. I mean heavyweight
right?
jazz. We did quite a few school concerts together and some pro ones where we were both there. We loved to play together, but yeah, he was just
Mhm.
scary good, and he related to other people, particularly the students, in a really powerful way that they just loved having him.
Mhm.
And he graduated from Eastman a year or two only before me. No, he graduated 1 year before I got there. Um, so I didn't meet him till he came back to play in Rochester at Eastman with a larger group, because Chuck would do concerts with orchestra and big band, both same music as usual. Um, and I would be in the orchestra with Jeff Tyzik and maybe Arnie Tchaikovsky from Toronto or something like that. Sometimes Al Persino way back. And that was Jerry Nywood playing sax first, and then on a couple of the early recordings, of course,
Mhm.
and then Chris stayed with them for years and years and years. It was a wild ride for Chris too.
Thinking about the Eastman years, and to think, of course, Phil Collins went through there. Were you
Yeah,
were you there? Did you
no,
guys
he left
cross
before
over?
I got there.
But of course, you, Vinny, um, Tyzik, of course,
Yeah,
and I mean, just the number of, well, of course, the many great players, not just in your era,
for
that
sure.
have come out of there. Okay, so that was a huge left turn with Chris, but I wanted to mention that before I forgot. But okay, so we're going to go back uh, to your dad. At what point did he think I need to pass you off to another teacher, or did that just happen when you got to college?
Yes, it pretty much happened when I got to college. Although, other than just I would say by the time I was a senior in high school, he wasn't hands off, but we weren't having regular lessons, as I remember it. I do remember though during high school that he made earlier years like freshman time, he made a weekly handwritten schedule for me to practice. Page this that he went through the standard books that we use, and some that you may not have heard of. Well, you've probably heard of all of them yourself. Sigmund Herring and
Mm,
those etude books and things,
right.
Coproche, and then the heavyweight stuff, Saint Jacobs, Method, Arbin, and the French things,
Hmm.
and Charlier. And he made a list of things I should practice. And he told me later that he just kept writing larger and larger lists just to see what I would do because he didn't think I'd get through half of it. And I would just plow through this stuff, not meaning that I would go through and not take any care with it, but I would study the things I was supposed to. And as a kind of a sidebar or maybe an important factor, I was enjoying improving. You would notice improvement.
Hmm.
Sometimes you play for a long time, over a long period of time, and you don't see much improvement because it's so gradual. And you think, wow, I'm not getting anywhere.
Right.
But if you had taped yourself or you had some point of reference to the year before, you might have gotten fairly significant amount better and not kind of realized it because one can be very critical about yourself, you know.
Sure.
So anyway, um, by the time I was headed to Eastman, I had spent the summer before at Interlochen, Michigan, and that was a summer camp. At the time, it was 8 weeks long, which was a long time, but it was an amazing experience. So my parents were trying to get me involved. I went 2 summers to that camp actually, to get me involved, not only to help me grow and learn and get experience with better players and all that, but also to kind of make sure that I could take it in terms of performance, nerves,
Mm,
and work ethic, and I was possibly going to succeed at it. We didn't know, but we never sat down with me, meaning as opposed to my brother and sister.
hmm.
I never sat down with my parents and decided what subject to major in school. I remember from as early as I can remember, it was going to be music. And they were even on board with me not taking a music education degree.
Hmm.
They got all kinds of advice from professors at the University of Montana and people that we knew had, a couple of whom had actually been to Eastman School of Music themselves, um, that you might want to get an ed degree because, you know, they
Right.
always said something to fall back on, something to fall back on. And in my mind, it was, I really don't want to worry about something to fall back on. I just want to go for this.
You're right. How many times have I heard that in the last decade or so? If somebody
Million.
says, if you have to think that you need something to fall back on, maybe you're not focused enough on the main thing right now, right?
Yeah, you hear that about actors and all kinds of people. Yeah.
Yeah. So, were you composing at all at this point?
No. Well, I started noodling around and really I wrote one unaccompanied piece in high school and one piece with piano that was kind of goofy and played it for the student body with some other, at an event where the students did things, entertained. And the piece that I wrote in high school that was um, an unaccompanied piece turned into Cascades later.
Oh,
Meaning the whole first section was the I had figured that out and it was fun to play and use that. But to answer your question directly, no, not till Eastman, and then I jumped in with both feet because I really liked it. The opportunity was there to get performed as quickly as you could write. Remember, no computers, so
right,
writing quickly was not really quick because also a major part of your time was to copy all the parts if it was a big ensemble.
right, and
So
then have to fix the parts, you know.
fix them, make changes. Yeah, notation had to be clear and correct, or you couldn't get it played. If it was good enough, which many student compositions were really cool because you know that college time when you have no boundaries. Um, there's some cool music that comes out.
I remember I did my master's at Butler University, and there was a good friend of
Yeah.
mine. He was a composition major who I found out was camping out in the practice room next to me when I would warm up. And so he wrote this unaccompanied piece. Well, it was for trumpet and narrator.
Okay.
But he said, "Okay, I've got this piece ready. You'll do it on my recital, right?" And I said, "Sure." And he showed it to me. Well, it was like all the stuff you do in a warm up that you never think,
Oh,
right? You do these wide skips, and
yeah.
I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can only pull this off," when I in the first 20 minutes of the day. But
Isn't that something?
but at least he was listening. A lot of times, I think some
Yeah.
of these people are sitting at the piano, writing for trumpet, and they're
Yeah.
like, "Oh, you can do a 2 octave jump." and
yeah, well,
or never take the horn off their face, right? Which to me that's the biggest thing is you
that
never
was
give
the
us a chance.
classic era for especially non-wind players when they would write for jazz ensemble, for instance. A piano player would write a whole 50 bars of whole notes for pads and not realize that we needed a bar off here and there. But those things I tapped into that stuff as quickly as I could because I understood the value of it and I really wanted to use to grow enough to really use composition forever and to maybe make some money at it and maybe to write for myself and maybe to write for other people and maybe to have some stuff recorded or played on television, which all of that has happened to some degree. And I still work really hard on the pedagogical aspect of each instrumental part. And I am not above a redo of something I believe that if there's a passage, for instance, that's really nice music, but it's just got a little thing in there that makes the player not like it, that it's worth changing. That doesn't mean you can't have challenges, but if you have challenges that make sense to a player, they'll rise to it and figure it out and enjoy it. But if you've written challenges that are just stupid, because I've had music written for me that was so stupid that I actually would succumb. If I had to play the piece, I would just be beat up by the end. And I don't just mean high and loud. It's just awkward and scary because you're going to chip notes in a recording trying to do this strange E-flat trumpet part or something. Those things happen. But anyway, I'm kind of rambling now. But yeah. So composition is a big part of my life, actually, and I really like it.
Are you working on something right now?
Always.
Always.
No, pretty much always. I do
Yeah.
take some breaks. You might be interested to know that I finished recently a 15-minute piano piece in 4 movements, and I finished a work that I have been working on for more than about 2 decades because it's a labor of love, and I just worked on it when I felt like it. And I finished the composition of, it's 4 movements. I finished the composition of 2 of the movements and the orchestration of the whole piece in the last year and a half or so. And it is actually a piano concerto with symphony.
See, okay, it didn't occur to me that you would write something that wouldn't feature trumpet up front.
You and most everybody else.
Right? So, so does Laura? Does she get pages every day? Like, okay, try this, see if this works.
No, she has not looked at the music.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. So I haven't run it by her or any other pianist in terms of. I'm pretty confident it's going to there'll be a little thing here and there because I'm not a pianist. But the way I work through things with my hands when I've composed things, I've studied it. I've probably spent more time on this piece than any other, just by choice because it's a labor of love too, and also on the orchestration. But you can go through and place your hands where the notes have to go and realize they can do some big skips and things. But if it's illogical or awkward, harmonically, certain things change, the level of accuracy changes, the level of accuracy changes, and the level of enjoyment changes. And I try to come up with things that, one of my techniques for piano is to come up with things that I like the sound of that are really, I can almost play them for a few beats,
Right.
And if I can do that, then a good pianist can just sail through it. So anyway, there's that kind of thought that goes into it.
I asked Jim Stevenson something about that, about being able to play the part, and he freely admits that he cannot do that, the piano part.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking Rachmaninoff, who, as far as those composers who had all those great piano works, is there anybody like that inspires you? You think about the way they orchestrate. Is that something you try to follow, or you just your own style?
Well, I follow my own style totally as a melodic and harmonic content, but in general terms, like glistening or ripping and tearing, or very vertical, meaning chords, or very horizontal, or wow, that's only unison, meaning it's so powerful, it's just unison. Unison is a really amazing tool compositionally. And if you start paying attention to things like that when you listen, because Laura and I listen to music or we'll go to a concert. I mean, not so much COVID, but during COVID. But when we go to concerts that are not orchestra with pianists or whatever, she loves to go to concerts, and I go with her pretty often. She has some friends she goes with too. And I do study the composition, meaning I really observe a lot, and from a compositional point of view, I guess, and a technical point of view. And there are certain things that are true that I can write for trumpet in different ways than a person who doesn't play. And a pianist can write for a piano in different ways than I can. There's total truth to that. But you just try to come up with something cool and I like melody too, so I don't get insane with the goofiness.
Well, I don't know. I might have to disagree with that. You know, after hearing Three World Winds the first time, and I don't mean goofy, but I mean holy cow. You know, it was uh, well, even going back to Cascades. You know, I mean those are jaw-dropping compositions the first time you hear them. And you know, the cool thing is, after these many years of, you know, I'll open it up on occasion and work through it. It's like, oh, I can finally play that lick. You know, or at some point you realize, oh, that's just a pentatonic, right?
Yeah.
Or you realize the pattern, whatever it is.
It's
But
a valve combination pattern a lot of
yeah,
times.
yeah.
Yeah.
But it sounds good, right? I mean, it works.
Yeah. Well, there's a little left turn I'll make here that's a tangential, and that is when I wrote my books. It's now 31 years ago. It was published. The 3 books.
Are you kidding?
Vizzutti Trumpet
It's really
Method,
been
and
that long?
I know. And New Concepts is from 1991.
Oh my
No,
gosh.
that's the method book. The new 2024 or something like that. It's a decade later. My point being that there were things I put in there that have not been put in other books that are kind of specific moves on the horn. They're not used that much, but it expands your capabilities when you work on things that are challenging, right? But things that would have been called maybe not impossible, but really very difficult, I hear coming out of college practice rooms because the book's been out that long.
Well, even go back to St. Jacome, right? I remember working through the Arbin characteristic studies and thinking, holy cow, you know, these are hard. And then the first time you look at St. Jacome, and you know, it's like 2 pages, 3 pages of just nonstop. And I remember I actually discovered St. Jacome because of Doc. He said, you know, I remembered if I could make it through one of those St. Jacome studies without stopping and taking the horn off my face, I'd be in good shape. So I thought, oh, I've had this book forever. You know, I went and opened it up. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, and you know, they're not rangy, right? But I mean, there's technique, and well, I mean, you've got to
nice
learn.
melody. Yeah.
You've got to learn to pace yourself, right? You got to learn to play
Yeah.
efficiently.
You got to
But
learn to lift off sometimes when you can. That's a whole other story. You know, I have a question here in the chat.
Yeah.
It says, what inspired me to tune such a zigzag and the double tonguing of octaves? I would say experimentation for the double tonguing of octaves, meaning the Arbin book has these intervallic, and I used to wonder how far can I go up the scale, for instance, and keep hitting a C, say on the bottom part, go beyond what's marked in the book. And I started to think that way about a lot of the exercises in the books. In actual fact, as famous and classic as Arbin is, I think it's fairly limited in a lot of ways too. And so I decided, just because I was a geeky trumpet player and having some success moving forward, trying to do more of that sort of thing. And then similarly, what kind of octaves, like a lot of people play on a fifth or a third or something. And I said, well, what can I do? I know what I can manage and not manage at this, even to this day, in terms of repetition, like an interval that goes and goes, because there are going to be limits, at least for each individual, some limit, right? And I discovered the sound of this octave thing, which I started to put into cadenzas. I remember in 1975 writing a piece for trumpet, a concerto of 3 movements called Snow Scenes for trumpet and orchestra with the Rochester Philharmonic. They actually commissioned me as a first-year grad student to write and play this piece for several holiday concerts. So it just had to have kind of a winter theme. They said, I don't care what you write. You could write White Christmas for all I care, but just write what you feel like. And that was really a cool opportunity, you know? And I put double tongue octaves in it. And I've only used that sort of thing, though, where I'm playing it. I don't expect anyone else to do it. And when other players have played that piece I just mentioned, Snow Scenes, I suggest that they do what they want there. It can be a lip slur, it can be double tonguing. The audience doesn't care. The audience likes just as much as they like, you know, all that nonsense. Or they just want to the flow of sound to work. So anyway, that's how the double tone octave things started to happen. Zigzag was, I don't remember the inspiration for the actual line. I can reimagine, because I had a really good band at the time, and I liked the idea of this groove. And I wanted to have a couple tunes that were real exciting and not too long and showed more of my style than just a style that everyone used. So let's say this is just fast fusion music, but again, it's that octave kind of skipping, you know, and in the middle of it, I put those are octaves. Yeah, you can find Zigzag. In fact, one of the pretty decent recordings from the 80s is on YouTube.
You know, but this is the kind of writing that pushes us to all, you know, step it up, right? I mean, you're talking about hearing stuff in the college practice rooms these days, right? I mean,
yeah,
but it wouldn't be there if you weren't writing stuff like that, or if Sergey wasn't, you know, doing the stuff that he was doing, you know, or other people were pushing the boundaries of writing. You know, Jim Stevenson, of course, I mentioned Pete Meechan. So it's, you know, I like that those people, including yourself, are putting those challenges out there for us, right? It just
yeah. Yes. I just want people to know that I've always been conscious of differentiating between the pieces I really designed for myself, not because I'm better than anyone else. It's just that I want to do certain things and give it a shot, and it challenges me and keeps me have a little uniqueness of recognizability and things now and then.
yeah.
Dragonfly is another one of those on flugelhorn that flies all over the place from the Rainbow album. And I want people to know that I really, when I write for someone else, when I wrote the 3 World Winds for Rex Richardson, a commission that he wanted, I definitely keep in mind that he's a great trumpet player, and I'm just not going to write stupid stuff that makes him not want to play the piece, for one thing. Also, it's just the right thing to do. There are challenges, but he loves,
Right.
he likes doing it, and he can burn it down. So yeah.
Right. Morris Northcutt has a comment. Morris is right up there in the Pacific Northwest with you. Do you know Morris?
Actually, no.
Oh my gosh, you have to meet Morris. And first of all, Morris, thanks for being here again tonight. Morris is a Patreon supporter of Studio HFL. So again, thank you. There's a shout out to you, Morris. Thanks for your continued support. But Morris is a consumer artist and amazing trumpet player. And you guys should definitely connect. But his question, and forgive me, I'm wearing bifocals, which is why I keep doing the old guy thing.
Well, don't do that.
Well, my eyes were tired and I had to take my contacts out. Morris, he says, hey, from Tacoma. Sorry if this was already asked. Are you teaching virtual lessons? If so, have you experienced any benefits? There are plenty of negatives, of course.
Yes, I do teach some virtual lessons. If you're interested, Vizzutti.com, you can send me an email. Feel free to. Are there any negatives? There are plenty of negatives. Are there any? Oh, I see that question. Experience any benefits? Well, not really in terms of what we're doing in a lesson format. You know, playing duets is almost impossible, at least with the Zoom platform. The trumpet sound is often really dumb, or just not working, or people have their things set so that the limiter comes in and cuts it out, or it's distorted because they're too close. I guess the benefits would be the obvious things. You can teach anyone in the world, and you don't have to go anywhere. And that's about it.
Well, you know, but think about it from the student side. You get access to to a teacher or performer you may have never been able to get access to before,
Of course,
right?
yeah.
You know, if you wanted to study, Andre Tofanelli comes to mind.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, who's
What
going
a
to,
sweetheart he is.
right? You know, but you know, what's it going to cost you to get to Italy
Totally.
and get a lesson? You know, but now you can. I don't know if Andre is teaching, but probably, right?
I agree totally. Yeah, that's right. Well,
You know,
in the world of friends and colleagues, several times I've gotten together with other players who their names, and just to chat or talk about a playing thing or have an idea or just to goof around a little bit. That's a definite benefit too. That's tangential to the teaching, but true.
well,
Time to Zoom there, Morris.
even platforms like this, right? I mean, you and I
Yeah.
spending time here tonight, and of course, there's so many others that have been out there. Well, and not even just podcast. I noticed, didn't you do a master class last night?
Yeah, for a group in Chile. I put the yes, I put the Zoom link out there on Instagram, but I think it was a pay event, so people might not have been able to get in.
But still, the thing is, well, you just said Chile. I mean, you know, how could they have gotten you during the pandemic if not
Yeah,
for the virtual aspect of it?
yeah, there've been
So
some international things for sure.
yeah. And I'm looking at, of course, ITG coming up, and I'm kind of wondering how ITG is going to doing virtual, because we trumpet players are such social animals, right? I mean, we really thrive
Oh
on
yeah,
the
the hang is a lot of the fun for sure.
right,
I mean, it won't be the same. It won't be even close, but hopefully there'll be some inspirational things about all the videos that will be posted. I'm about to put the finishing touches on mine, which is almost an hour long.
hmm Well, this is
And
a good push for that then, because I know JC and Grant and all those
yeah,
people have been working so hard
yeah,
and kind of in an impossible situation, right? To try to make something, right? We don't want to go
yeah,
another year without an ITG. Um, so yeah,
right.
I'm going to do my best, to get there. And of course, the nice thing about this too is you said you're making a video, which means that if you miss the live or you miss the premiere, it'll be archived, right?
I believe that it's going to be for those that register. It'll be available to watch. Yeah,
hmm
at kind of at your leisure. I didn't remember. I didn't know what they did last summer, but yeah, I'm pretty sure that it's going to be
hmm
available, so you don't have to sit at your computer at a certain time on a certain day.
I'm going to go back to Morris Northcutt for a second, and
Yeah.
talking about videos, because you need to get on Morris's social media. Morris, his sound, he's a Rafael Mendez fan. Now he doesn't have that vibrato, right? He's got a beautiful vibrato, but he doesn't have
Yeah.
Rafael's. But no, you should check him out.
We
Um,
did meet. We did meet when with
oh,
the
good, good.
Tacoma concert band.
Um,
Yeah.
and I'm anxious for travel to open up again, because
Yeah.
Morris will want to have another cup of coffee with him at some
All
point.
right.
But let's see, any other comments down here. I don't know what Sebastian's asking when he says, "What do you think of fashion?" I mean, are you a Versace kind of guy?
Only when it's on sale.
You're not like
You
Jens
know,
and paying $700 for those shirts, are you?
yeah, no surprise. I actually have something I'll share about fashion. I'm knocking around the house in my jeans and stuff most times. I think you should dress for the situation for sure. I think you should have some one or two things that are really nice. I think you should have a decent pair of shoes to wear on stage and in front of people, because I've seen so many players, brass quintets and orchestras and bands have a tuxedo or something and terrible shoes. And then yes, I like to take a step in the Severinsen direction with some unusual, yet I'll say elegant concert wear. Yes.
Well, you're making a statement. I mean, we're both ways. I'm thinking about Tina Helseth, who plays barefoot,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I mean, she doesn't have to worry about shoes.
Oh, I see. I didn't actually
Yeah,
know.
yeah. Let's see. And
I
this
like her
says
playing though.
Alan Vizzutti. Are you posting this question? Who's posting these? Because
No, I'm not.
it says your name on there. I love the Eastman Brass Quintet 1975 album, particularly the last track, Suite for Brass Quintet, March. What was it like to rehearse and record with the Eastman Brass faculty? Any good
Who
stories?
is that? Is that my daughter lives in Italy, but she'd be in bed now.
I wonder, whoever's posting under Alan Vizzutti, if you could identify yourself, that would be nice.
That would be
Unless your name
interesting.
really is Alan Vizzutti, and what a coincidence
Yeah,
that
wow,
would be,
that'd be a
right?
first.
Yeah.
Well,
So, what about that? The Eastman Brass Quintet. What
the
was that
Eastman
like?
Brass Quintet was one of my very profoundly wonderful experiences. I got in there this summer before my sophomore year, faculty brass quintet. It was a well-oiled machine back
Hmm.
before the Canadian brass. If you use in a time like that, it sounds prehistoric. But the concerts we played were very serious, even when we should have been more pop oriented. in small towns, because we did do tours and some international touring. We played Alvin Etler and Gunther Schuller and all the Vern Reynolds modern stuff, and all of his Centonis, which are Renaissance music, fabulous arrangements, his original handwriting. He was the French horn player in the group. If you don't know him, he has a wonderful etude book originally for French horn and for trumpet. He has many great compositions. They're very difficult, well written, unusual style of his own contemporary. His brass quintet, his first one, is quite famous because it's real tonal and a lot of nice movements, and then his music gets more and more wild. We recorded that stuff at the Eastman Theater, and we recorded also an album with percussion. I don't know if Summit Brass has that or not. So we recorded an album with brass quintet and piano with Barry Snyder playing piano. He still teaches at Eastman, and a brass quintet and percussion with John Beck playing, who has retired from Eastman. And the music is really worth listening to. It was a great experience. It ruined brass quintet for me, though, because these guys were so in tune and so accurate and so consistent and worked. I just had to fit it as a new member into like a cog into a working machine, you know, like you replaced one of the gears in a Ferrari transmission. And it was challenging and difficult, but man, anyway, it was a really great experience. We didn't get a lot of notoriety. In fact, the albums that you're talking about is very recently released. Like in the 90s or something, and it was recorded in 75. Just couldn't get a deal or anything.
You're talking about, you guys played really well together, but what was the vibe? I mean, did you feel like a part of that group when you came in because of the age difference, the experience difference?
When I was in rehearsal with them at the school or performance at the school, sometimes or on the road, I was just a colleague. The age was not a factor. They would be themselves. They understood that if they acted goofy or said some things, about somebody or whatever, that it was not going to get back in the school atmosphere it was sort of what stays in our group, stays in our group. Although there wasn't a lot of nattering or nastiness. It was just this staunch professor types would let their hair down sometimes.
Right.
And it was pretty funny. I was too young to drink. So they, on a night off or after a gig, they drink like crazy sometimes. It was hilarious because all of a sudden I'm the one who's sane. But anyway, the atmosphere was fine and it never was a problem.
Yeah. Are any of those others still around, or do you stay in contact with any of them?
They're not.
They're all gone.
Well, Cherry Beauregard, the tubist, moved to Utah, and we only had a couple. He is a wonderful person. He might still be around. I haven't been in contact with him. But Dan Patrolak, the first trumpet player, Donald Knobb, the bass trombone player, and Vern Reynolds, the French horn player, have all they're all deceased. They lived pretty long, but yeah.
Yeah. Sebastian says thank you, it looks like, for answering his question. David Wolf, going back to Doc. David is a friend of mine here in Indianapolis, another trumpet player, of course, and really good friend. David, thanks for being here. Actually, everybody, thanks for being here. So, I'm looking at the time. I want to respect your time, but
Thank you.
I feel like we could go forever. But we're not going to. We got to leave something out there, right? Thank you. I love to hear that. So, Alan, hang on one second. I'm gonna kind of wrap things up.
Okay.
And I got to tell you, and I'll say this in front of everybody else too. My wife and I came up with another T-shirt idea, and specifically for interviews like these.
Yeah.
I said something. One of us is going to regret this conversation. And she says, you need to print that and send it to your guest, and you both wear it during the interview, right?
That's clever. I like it.
Yeah. So now it's out there, so it's going to have to be done.
It's going to have to happen.
Have to be done. So, all right. So, everybody, thank you so much for joining me and Alan here tonight, and of course, thanks to Trent Austin and Austin Custom Brass for sponsoring tonight and the rest of May. Of course, next week we've got Mary Elizabeth Bowden. That's May 11th. Wayne Bergeron, May 18th. Bijan Watson, May 25th. All again at 8 p.m. streaming live. And let's see, the WICR 88.7 FM radio show this week is going to feature Mike Williams. It's part 2. Next week is Carol Dawn Reinhardt. That was a great interview. I don't know if you've ever met Carol, Alan,
I
but
have.
oh my gosh, what a sweet,
Yeah,
sweet
she's
person.
great.
Um, so I'm trying to think who else I've got at the end of the month. But anyways, you can always go to studioHFL.com and find out all that information. And of course, sign up for the newsletter where you can stay up to date. I don't deluge everybody's mailbox. It's once a week. You get a newsletter once a week. So again, thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting Studio HFL and for hearing from our very own legend, Alan Vizzutti, here tonight. So again, thanks. And Alan, don't go anywhere. I'm going to sign off, everybody.
Thanks,
And
everyone.
yeah, see you next time.
All right.